Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the red rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low magazine? Because 4Low magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have none other than the infamous or famous Del Albright. Del has worked tirelessly for especially the Rubicon, but also land use in general, as an ambassador for Blue Ribbon Coalition, and he started the Friends of the Rubicon, or was one of the founders of the Friends of the Rubicon. But we'll get into all that with Del. Del, thank you for coming on board and agreeing to have a conversation with us today.
You bet, Rich. It's nice to be in touch again.
Yeah, it is.
I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. So I'm going to start with the question I start with everybody is, where were you born and raised?
Well, I was born in Oregon, but my dad only stayed there a couple of years because he found a job in L.A., so we moved to Southern California when I was just a young kid, almost a baby still, but mostly Southern California is my, what I call home. We spent several years in LA. Dad was a machinist, and in those days, which is a long time ago.
With a stone and chisels?
Yeah, he was making square wheels, but yeah. So he had no trouble finding work, and he was quite talented. So he had a lot of job offers. We lasted 6 or 7 years there in LA, and then we moved to San Diego. So most of my childhood best memories were the San Diego area, a little place called El Cajon.
Okay.
Went to school there, and all my best buddies, and that was my upbringing. And as you know, Southern California is full of great four-wheeling and desert places to go exploring. So that's a lot of what we did. My dad pretty much 2 to 3 weekends a month would grab me and later my little brother and sister and take us out to the desert, to the ocean, to the mountains. We fished a lot. We had boats. And that was my upbringing, was being outdoors with my dad and mom. It was just, I was really fortunate. My current wife, Stacy, says I'm like Leave It to Beaver. if you remember that TV show, the perfect family, the good life, a good upbringing, didn't have alcoholic parents, didn't have a lot of money, but made the best of every nickel and spent our time outdoors. And that's really what set my goal in life, was to be that kind of an outdoors person, and enjoy that freedom. That was driven into me, maybe not on purpose as much as I think now, but my parents would emphasize how lucky we were that we lived someplace where we could go play in the desert and go fishing in the ocean, not be hampered by some other, different country kind of rules. We had freedom,
Right.
and that stuck in me like you can't imagine. I mean, well, you do know I live for it every day.
Right. Exactly. So in those early years, the being outdoors with your parents, the hunting, the fishing, the exploring, driving around, what were the mode of transportation? What kind of vehicle did you guys run around in?
So, when you asked me to do this podcast, I mentioned that old news is good news, and I'm kind of an old guy, right?
Yeah.
I started. My dad and I, he built it. I held the light and tried to find the right tool, but we built a buggy, a brush buggy,
Okay.
out of a '52 Studebaker.
Nice.
In those days, the Armstrong True Track was kind of the tire that people had in desert rigs. But in the back, Dad found some hay baler tires, implement tires, and they're nice and wide, kind of a balloon looking thing. But to get them to fit on this Studebaker frame, he had to weld two rims together.
Oh.
We didn't, commercially, you just couldn't buy a wide enough rim. So he welded two rims together to make a wide tire for this balloon that was on the back.
Nice.
And it's pushed by a, big old V8 water pumper. He put a 4-speed tranny in it, put a piece of plywood behind the driver passenger seat on the floor. That's where I stood and held on to the roll bar doing 50 miles an hour across, Glamis and Imperial Sand Dunes and Ocotillo Wells, places like that. The heck of it is, Rich, in those days, and I'm talking 60s, 60, 62, 63, 64, mid 60s.
Right.
We could unload the buggy. He flat towed it. We could unhook. Not even sure where we were, just someplace like Ocotillo or out there in the middle of nowhere, and point it east or south, whatever, and we would stop when we got to the Colorado River. There was no wilderness areas. There were no fences. There were no boundaries like we have today. I mean, I grew up exploring that desert without restrictions and limitations. Yeah, it's all changed now, but
Yeah, you mentioned the Imperial Sand Dunes. That area, it was amazing how immense it was. And now it's all shut down except for the little bit of Glamis area, and it's really is a shame.
yeah, that, and see, that sort of, I mean, my dad wasn't like politically oriented. Well, he had opinions. He'd read the newspaper, the breakfast table every morning, and quack and holler about some politician doing this or that. And by God, if it was in the newspaper, it had to be true.
Well, back then it was more likely to be true.
More likely, yeah. But we get out in the desert, and all that would, of course, go away. Just like today, you kind of forget your troubles. Get on that 52 Studebaker. We called it the Lobster because the way it's set, it had two big headlights sitting each side of the radiator. And it looked like some kind of a land-loving lobster. That's what we called it. I kept it for years. But we would forget all the politics, all the stuff, and then just drive. And Glamis, my dad took me there for the first time, I want to say 62 or 3. And there was some sign stuck on a piece of like lath, like a stake. It said, Competition Hill this way. And I said, what's that, Dad? And he said, we're not going to go there. There'll be 50, maybe 100 people there. It's just too busy. Yeah, no, it's 15,000. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
We did all those areas, hunted out there in the desert. So that upbringing, and my mom was the other side of the equation. She was a people person. mom was like the family, matriarch. She was the queen. We'd have family picnics, 300 people.
Wow.
And my mother was one of the central focus points for wisdom and help. And how do I do this? And, who was who in the family zoo? She knew everything. So she was the people person. And she basically gave me what I consider my people skills and leadership. Be nice, be firm, talk to people, like you would want to be spoken to, and be nice. But don't let your opinion slide. Let people know what you need and want, what you think, and speak up. So, between the outdoor upbringing and my mom, teaching me how to be facilitative and, work with people, I think that launched it launched my whole life.
Okay. When you were in school, did you play sports at all, or were you
Nope.
spent more time outdoors?
I was mostly outdoors, but all my uncles, my mom had 6 brothers.
Wow.
World War II kind of Navy veterans and construction workers. And I grew up loving my uncles and learning from them, but they were all crippled up. They were wounded,
Right.
and it was from football in school. And I said to myself, I'm a musician too. So, I kind of like my fingers and, like to be able to play the guitar, the piano, whatever. And I looked at my uncles and they were just beat up. And so I decided not to do sports in high school. I tried wrestling because I studied kung fu and some of jujitsu and things like that. And so I tried wrestling. And, my hair was not long at all, but it was down to my neck or something. Anyway, the coach said, if you're going to wrestle, you got to cut your hair. Well, nope, not cutting my hair. So anyway, I got in the marching band. I grew up high school. I was in the dance band, the marching band, the jazz band. Music became my life. Music and girls. But like I say, leave it to Beaver. I didn't smoke cigarettes. I didn't drink a beer. I didn't, sneak into the bathroom. I didn't do any of that stuff. I was lame.
So what was, did you, well, you're talking about being in the bands, what was your favorite instrument, or did you play a number or just one, or?
Well, when I was 7 years old, a lot of my family members played musical instruments, harmonica, whatever, piano. My mom always had a piano in our houses, wherever we lived. But I wanted something I could take with me. So anyway, she got me on the accordion. That's how I started.
Okay.
I took accordion lessons. I fell in love with my accordion teacher, about 9 or 10 years old. Her name was Mrs. Peggy Parks. I remember to this day falling, crush head over heels. So I practiced. I wanted to look good for her. I learned the accordion. And the right hand on the accordion is the same as the right hand on the piano. So I started, my mom started teaching me a little bit of piano. And that was my main instrument for 40 years.
Wow.
I played in honky tonks. I played in restaurants, bars, belly dancing studios. I've done a lot of barroom piano work. But then, I started more jeeping and going out in the world of off-road. I couldn't take a piano when the accordion was kind of out of date. The Beer Barrel polka is probably not going to go over well at a KOH campfire.
Probably. Well, I don't know. Late enough, it might.
So then yeah, good point. So then I started playing the guitar, and I'm a campfire guitarist, so I take it on a lot of trips, overlanding adventures, Death Valley trips. I'll take the guitar and break it out and start playing a few songs and getting people singing. And so that is now my favorite, is the guitar.
Excellent. Excellent. So
Yeah.
as a kid in San Diego, and I'm assuming that's where you went to high school, and because you said you were in dance band and marching band, that kind of thing. Did you weren't playing the squeeze box or the accordion in band, were you?
No, I was a drummer.
Drummer, okay.
Yeah, I did snare drum in the marching band, kind of led the drum team. And then in the dance band, I picked up an electric, was before electric pianos, it was actually kind of an organ, but it was in a wooden framework, kind of like a small piano.
Okay.
Anyways, same idea as electric piano. So I picked one of those up to play in my little rock band, dance band. We were called the Barons,
Nice.
and really modern tunes like Louie Louie and stuff from the 60s.
Which was modern
But-
then.
Yeah, the heck of it is, by the time I turned 16, I needed a car to transport my musical instruments to the band practice and to school, whatever, right?
Right.
So my mom and dad had this 58 ranch wagon, a Ford station wagon, T-Bird engine, and they were going to get traded in on something else. And I'd saved up, I don't know, let's say $300. And so I offered my dad $300 for this car. He said, all right, you can have it, just don't get in trouble and, blah, blah, blah. So to transport my musical instruments, I needed some padding in the back of this 58 station wagon, right?
Yeah, that's what it was for.
Yeah. So I got this mattress that fit in the back of the wagon for transporting my musical instruments.
How convenient.
Mom-
Did you tint
Mom
the windows too?
No, I actually had some Velcro curtains for a while, but Mom didn't buy that musical instrument routine. She kept a pretty close eye on me. But yeah, music was everything to me in those days. In fact, when I graduated out of high school in El Cajon, I started going to what do you call it? Community college.
Okay.
I still hadn't found my way, so I signed up for. I was taking music and boxing in community college, and pretty soon I realized I was spinning in circles, wasting my time. What the heck am I doing? And the one thing I know I've listened to your podcast, you talk about giving back. I actually was teaching kids part-time, young kids, 7, 8, 9, 10, accordion on the side.
Okay.
And I'd drive around town, go to the house, give them a 30-minute lesson and make a few bucks. And so I was passing on music to younger kids. So that was the one good thing I was doing. But the rest of the time, I was either boxing, chasing girls or making music. And anyway, that I hit a threshold, and all my uncles had been in the war, served in the military, and my dad was in World War II. So I joined the Army, gave up all that college stuff, and said, you know what? It's time to join the Army and go do something with myself. So I've been a Boy Scout, Cub Scout, all that stuff. So come to think of it, Stacy reminded me that I'd been in uniform most of my life,
Right.
of one form or another.
Okay. Yep. How far did
Yeah.
you get in scouting?
I was, what's the one right under Eagle?
Life. Yeah.
Life. I made it to Life.
Wow, so close.
I know. I made Order of the Arrow. I did all that stuff. In fact, I still have my uniform, Rich.
Wow.
I still have my merit badges.
I think my parents have mine. I hope
Yeah,
they do.
well, my mom kept everything.
That's awesome.
I won't say it fits. Yeah, all the Order of the Arrow. I've got all that stuff in a box, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, so I just the Army called and I joined.
And that was in the height of Vietnam.
Yes, sir. I got in and I basically volunteered to go to Vietnam. I joined the Army and volunteered for Vietnam. I was ready to do my part. And I believed in those days, the longer you get away from a war like that, the more you realize, maybe you didn't make the best decision. But for me, it was. And I wanted to go. So, but the funny thing is, you're like this. My uncle on my dad's side was like a PG&E, Pacific Power and Light telephone lineman repairman. He'd climb those telephone poles and fix stuff up there before they had, good cherry pickers and stuff.
Right.
And I admired that. And he told me stories of Korea when he was up in the telephone pole doing something with a couple of bodyguards down below, getting shot at by some, bad guy. And I'm thinking, wow, hanging up there in a telephone pole, maybe with a pistol and some guy shooting at you. That's TV stuff. I want some of that. So I told the Army when I joined, I said, I want to be a telephone lineman repairman. Yes, sir. No problem. Yeah, you've got a high school, diploma. You got a little college, boxing and music. Yeah, we'll get you fixed up.
Yeah.
You know how the story goes, right?
Yeah, infantry.
Yeah, once they got my signature, I never saw a telephone pole the rest of my career. They immediately decided I'd make a good infantryman.
There you go.
Yeah. And they also, what they did pick up on was those people skills I told you that my mom helped me kind of get a feel for and get a handle on. The Army has, they know when they see somebody that has, some kind of leadership potential. So that's the first thing they did was start testing me for leadership positions. Went from there.
And where did you end up rank wise, and how many years did you serve?
I did 6 years of active duty.
Okay.
And then 8 years in the National Guard. And in the 6 years of active duty, like I say, they immediately sent me to grunt school, infantry. Then they sent me to a leadership school, and of course I kicked ass. I was in good shape. I was fairly smart for a kid, 18, 19, I guess. And they ended up sending me to officer candidate school. OCS,
Yeah.
6 months of learning to be an officer. So I graduated second lieutenant, volunteered to go to Vietnam. They said, not yet. We want to train you some more. And I kept taking these tests and these batteries of exams, and they kept finding more things to do with me. In those days, they were looking for hot shots. They wanted heroes. They wanted, officers who could lead in pretty much any circumstance. They ended up, I was a parachutist, airborne. I ended up going to Ranger school. I was a Ranger. I ended up Green Beret school. I became a frogman. I did everything combat that the United States Army had to offer in those days. Somebody told me in the Department of Defense, it was like the top 2% of anybody that served in the military in my day and age as far as training.
Wow.
Airborne Ranger, Green Beret, frogman, paratrooper, I used to jump out of airplanes with scuba tanks on.
Nothing like having an anchor.
It was, I've been shot at in 3 countries.
Wow.
I served a year and a half in South America, Central America, a year in Vietnam. I've lived in 16 states, courtesy of Uncle Sam, usually. And like I say, the combat side of me, it became my life. I don't want to sound bloodthirsty or anything like that. I'm not stupid. I didn't have a death wish, but I had a really strong family everybody was kind of religious in my family. Pentecostal, Baptist. I had just about everything you can think of. And they set up a prayer circle when I was overseas. Everybody praying for me, and I just kind of knew that I wasn't going to get wasted over in some stupid jungle, either in South America or Vietnam. I just had a feeling that I was going to come home. And so I did all kinds of stuff that, not everybody would do. Ended up with a chest full of medals and no really serious wounds, and made it home. So for me, it was, like I say, those 6 years. I speak 3 languages, courtesy of Uncle Sam. I can order a beer and talk to a girl in about 5 languages, but so I ended up a major. When I left the National Guard, I was a major. I don't regret any of my Army stuff. That's one of the things that the Rubicon people, when I started the Friends of Rubicon, this is too military. And I'm thinking, it probably is. I can't help it.
Well, and there's a certain degree of that comes, you started early, with the early uniforms and scouting. There's a hierarchy in scouts that unless you've been through it, you really don't understand. But, you start off like that, like a private, and you work your way up.
Yeah. I did Cub Scout uniform, Boy Scout uniform, marching band uniform, and then of course the Army. And even when I started doing my land use career, well, when I was in the National Guard, I was also working for the fire department.
Okay.
Here in California, Cal Fire, they call it, CDF back in the day. When I came home from Vietnam, 1971, anyway, I went to school. And the reason I decided to go back to college, in Vietnam, I'm sitting on this rice paddy dike with my buddy who was breaking me in because he was going home to the job I had there in the combat operations. And we're sitting on this rice paddy dike, mud. We have a poncho wrapped between the two of us, and the way you would sleep sometimes is you just sit side by side, have your cigarette, whatever, cup of coffee, and then just lay down away from each other, but butt to butt with one poncho covering you up while you grabbed a few hours of sleep to keep the rain off. So we're having one of those conversations. What are you going to do when you get home? His name was Dave. Said, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get into forestry and become a logger. I said, wow, that sounds cool. All right. I like that idea. Anyway, short of the story is he went home, started school up in Humboldt, Eureka, Northern California. A year later, I did the same thing. I got out of the Army and met him up there in Humboldt. Got a place to live, and I started studying forestry. So we both went to college together after being in Vietnam together, and we both ended up in logging, which led me to the Forestry and Fire Department because it was combined. It was California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection.
Right.
So I went to work for them in the logging side of it. And a few years of that, I went to the fire side, moved over and started fighting fire. Anyway, I've been in uniform forever. I don't know what it's like not to be in uniform. You've seen me in my starched shirts to this day, Yep. That's just, it's ingrained.
So at what point did you decide to, I know that, growing up with the Studebaker, the modified Studebaker, the Lobster, at what point did you go, okay, I'm going to start wheeling? I mean, was it during the Forest Service time or?
I took the Lobster with me when I came home from Vietnam. I went and got it at my dad's house in San Diego, took it up to Eureka. And that's a town on the coast of California.
Right.
So I was living where you could drive on the beach in those days. So we jump in the lobster, and I'd drag it down to the beach. South Spit was one of the, big long spits of ocean sand, and it's wet sand, and it's just great driving sand. And I'd crank that baby out V8 up and do 50, 60 miles an hour down the beach, which doesn't sound like a big deal, except in those days, the beach was loaded with driftwood burl, big stumps, root wads. So I was actually weaving in and out of an obstacle course in this buggy, cruising up and down the beach. And I fell in love. I knew I wanted to be off pavement. I didn't care where. I started out, I got a couple of motorcycles. I had street bikes. I had dirt bikes, 305 Scrambler in those days, no suspension. So I just started anything that would get me off the pavement. I started doing. I didn't get my first Jeep. I had 3 4-wheel drive trucks because we did a lot of hunting. So we had 4-wheel drive trucks, short beds and step sides.
Right.
And pretty much, the only thing I do is lift them a little, put some good tires on and a winch, and go hunting and go 4-wheeling. Well, then when I was doing my Cal Fire career, they moved me from around, kind of go around the state. If you want to move, if you want to promote, you have to move, basically. So I was poking around, and I ran into guys that were jeeping and 4-wheeling these Toyotas and big, nice off-road rigs that are pretty common today, but they were just starting to blossom in those days. And I had to have one, so I started getting into Jeeps and been broke ever since.
Just empty every pocket. Yep.
But yeah, I tell you what though, that whole lifestyle, especially then, the camaraderie, I mean, it's still there. It's always going to be there. Campfire camaraderie and whatever you're doing, if you're outdoors around a campfire, it's always good. But those first folks that I met in those days, they were so helpful, so willing to share. This is before the pirate days when, you post up a silly question and you get beat up, or you post up a reasonable question and you get stupid answers. I mean, pirate.
Oh, yeah.
But these guys were so helpful at Cal 4-Wheel. The people were just amazing, and it hooked me. So, getting into clubs and things like that. And I think I've had 5 Jeeps now, and the wife still has 4, and I only have 1. But yeah, that whole the Army led me to that, fire service. I just blended right in with the chain of command. I was like, what's the big deal? Wear a uniform? Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, you don't have to choose in the morning then.
That's right. It made it simple. And I got to tell you, simple is good.
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah, I had a lot of opportunities in those days. When Cal Fire picked me up, CDF at the time, they the tests and the interviews, and so they decided I had some potential, and they put me through this 2-year intern program where I rotated around like 6 different government agencies at the state's expense, learning how the Department of Parks and Recreation, Department of Energy, Fish and Game, yada, yada. I got to spend like 6 months with each of these departments with the bigwigs, sitting in the office of the main man in charge, learning how they run their organization and what it's all about. Because Cal Fire wanted to turn me into a big chief someday. And at the same time, they paid for my master's degree.
Excellent.
So I got a master's degree doing this rotation. And the cool thing, this is a good, if we have time, I'll tell you this story.
Absolutely. We have plenty of time.
Okay. Well, I got to Fish and Game, they have a team of people that are just like doctors and wildlife. What am I trying to? Veterinarians,
Right.
and their job is to monitor wildlife, their health, check on the deer herds, whatever. Well, California has a Thule elk problem. These indigenous elk, they're smaller than like the Roosevelts and the big Rocky Mountain guys, but they're in California and they live in the Owens Valley. 395, kind of high desert. Anyway, they destroy crops. So like you wouldn't, they'll come in and just eat a farmer's livelihood overnight. So Fish and Game was going to move some of these elk, and I heard about it. I said, what are you talking about, moving elk? Oh, yeah, come on along. We'll set you up. We all pack up in these Suburbans and head for this town called Bishop. Anyway, they teach me how to be what's called a coyote, where you stand out in the brush and the sagebrush and hide until the elk are charging you. Then you stand up and wave this thing and try to scare them and turn them towards a funnel trap. We built these funnel traps so they'd come in a short neck and have room when they got inside these tall walls, and we could capture them. So I got to be a coyote. This herd of elk charging at me, and I thought, the Army paid me to get shot at. I'm doing this. This is stupid. Turns out, they knew the elk would turn, and once you turn them, and you regain your composure and throw your underwear away, whatever. It became a pretty good job, right? So we get them into this funnel trap. Now, remember, I'm a fireman, young kid. My eyeballs are big. I'm up on the wall looking down, and one of the vets jumps in the herd. They've kind of settled down. They're just kind of, pacing around in this enclosure. He jumps down there because there's an elk down, a big old bull, like he's dead, right? And I'm watching this thinking, you got to be kidding me. If that elk wakes up or whatever, he's going to tear you a new one. Well, the elk was dying. He'd had I don't remember, a seizure, heart attack. Something happened and he quit breathing. Down he went. So this guy jumps in, and he's got this like a little, CPR kind of thing you put over the mouth. He's trying to give this elk some oxygen. He looks up and he said, "Get your butt down here, Albright." I'm thinking, yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I buckle up, Buttercup. I jumped in. He says, get a hold of his hind leg and you pump it opposite of when I give him air, just like CPR, push on the chest, breathe in the mouth. I'm pumping this bull elk's leg in and out, as hard as I could when on signal. And he's shooting oxygen into this thing. All of a sudden, I see the chest of this bull starting to work on its own. And I looked up at the doc that was doing it. I said, "Is this the time to get out?" He says, "As fast as you can." We jumped up, dove for the wall, started crawling up, and that elk got up and started whipping ass. He was mad, in shock, but he was alive. I brought a bull back from death.
I wish,
So,
there's times that I'm so glad that we didn't grow up with social media or, video cameras, phones, like they do now, where everything in life is recorded. Because
Yes.
there's things I wouldn't have wanted to get out there, but boy, I sure would have loved to have seen that.
Yeah. Well, we had a helicopter guy, contract pilot for Fish and Game, a really nice guy. Unfortunately, about 10 years after this one trip, he crashed into a wall and died doing the same thing. But when I was with him, he'd take me up, and they wouldn't let me shoot. Something about liability, I guess. But they had a dart gun, and they would fly the helicopter. Let's say a bull got rogue and didn't get in the funnel trap, and they still wanted to get him. They'd fly the helicopter with a shooter sticking out of the door, strapped in, like you see in the movies these days, with this dart rifle, shoot a bull on the run while flying, puts him down. Usually, it's not instantaneous. So it's not like they just fall over and hurt themselves. They go, a little bit, slow down, stop, and just sort of lay down.
Right.
Very humane. Then we'd all jump out, put him in a net on a long line, and pick him up with a helicopter and move him over and put him someplace else. Yeah. It was, I tell you what, I mean, like I say, I've been all over the world and had all kinds of experiences. And, seeing that was pretty impressive. So that's the kind of stuff I learned in my early days of Cal Fire.
So it's reminding me of, the story is reminding me of Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, and having, that guy Jim, the guy that used to run around out there in the bush with barefooted, chasing the animals.
Yep. Yeah.
But you had boots on, right?
What's that?
You had boots on?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Good.
No, it was truly, I thought I was in hog heaven, Rich. I mean, I thought I was just going to be a fireman and go out there and pull hose, chase fire, get dirty, thirsty, and hungry. And they had me, doing things like that. When I went to the Energy Commission in California, one of the commissioners, his name was Rusty Schweikert, and he was an astronaut.
Oh.
Apollo 13, I think. One of them. Anyway, the significance of this story is that's who I got assigned to. And I looked at Mr. Schweikert and I said, I know you. He said, well, I'm the astronaut, yet. I said, no, I know you more than that. It was my Green Beret 18 in Panama that was assigned, and we were trained to recover his capsule if it landed in the jungles instead of the ocean.
Oh.
We were the standby team. We learned to smoke jump, land in trees, rappel, clear jungle, kill bad guy, whatever it took to make sure that our astronauts and the important components got home. So I was his team leader if he landed in the jungle. And I'm sitting there looking at him, and it was one of those moments when it's like he stopped breathing, or he just couldn't imagine that he was meeting me, because we never really met in person. Everything was, paperwork, pictures. Right. It was pretty amazing. I sat there and talked to him a lot about being an astronaut, and he talked to me a lot about using a machete in the jungle and chasing bad guys. So it's pretty cool.
So
yeah,
you're working for Cal Fire, or what CDF, and you're going through the training. Where did that lead you next?
Well, the more, it's one of those things that's, it's like work expands to fill the space available. The more you train, if you're good at what you do and try hard, put your whole, heart and soul in it, the next thing you know, they got you doing something more. Anyway, I became this intern. I moved around the state, seeing how Cal Fire worked, different places, dispatching, structure fires, hay bale fires, car fires, wildland fires. And I knew I was leaning more towards the wildland fire side rather than structure fires and hay bales, stuff like that.
Right.
So I kept finding jobs that would take me closer to being a wildland firefighter. And that's where I ended up. Went to, in 1981, I went to Sacramento for an assignment. That's where headquarters is. And they were starting the prescribed burning program, chaparral management, which was on track to save California from the mega wildfires we see today. Oh, guess what? The environmentalists stopped that. We used to do a lot of controlled burns and prescribed burns, and the wackos, excuse me, my friend, but the wackos, the radical environmental idiots that push the politicians to shut down things like prescribed burning, have ruined the state of California. But I started that program. I was part of the startup team for prescribed burning in the 80s. I mean, we burned with, these helicopters that drop flame out of a torch hanging from a line. It's called a helitorch. We did wildlife burns to get rid of the brush and make more grass. It was really a fantastic time. But eventually, when they saw how well I was doing with the prescribed, I made a movie even. It was part of my master's degree, prescribed burning for wildlife habitat. And that got me a door open to go to my final resting place, which was Calaveras County, where I live now, to be in this Tuolumne Calaveras Ranger Unit and be the prescribed burn dude. So I did that for years. Then I promoted to more fire stuff, operations. And eventually they made me the chief. I spent my last 8 years as the chief of the Ranger Unit, main guy in charge. Had fires. My biggest fire had 4,000 people working for me. 400 bulldozers. I forget how many fire engines, but let's just say a few thousand.
Right.
Just on one fire. So I spent, like I said, most of my career, fighting wildland fires as a chief officer. And I had friends that did the structure fire side and they didn't last long after they retired. You breathe so much crap, and even in a wildland fire, if you're not masked up, or because usually you're not in a wildland fire, you're just breathing stuff that you don't know what's in that smoke besides poison oak. But a lot of these fires in rural California, in my day, the meth labs and the pot and whatever, even furniture, in some old trailer house out in the middle of the forest, the furniture puts out poisons and toxins like you can't believe. So they breathe a lot of that stuff. And I think the average I read one time was 8 to 10 years after retirement, most firemen die. Some kind of national, especially on the structure side. So
Yeah, from environmental exposures.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how my grandparents, my two granddads went that way. But theirs was, one worked in the naval shipyard, Bethlehem Steel, there in San Francisco, and then the other worked with shop towel, and chemicals and that kind of stuff at the beginning of that trade. So they died late. I mean, they were very, they weren't young men. It was due to the environmental exposure.
Yeah, and me, I fight the radical environmentalists a lot, but there were some things they did that were good for us, and had those people in your family had a little more protection, who knows?
Exactly.
Same with the firefighting side. We used to run into burning buildings and just grab somebody and bring them out. Well, now you better have your safety gear, you better have your tracker and your gloves, and you better have a mask and breathing apparatus. But by God, it's firefighters last longer now,
Right?
and they're safer. So I'm selective on how I pick on some of the changes the environmentalists have made and the wackos and I'm selective. Does that sound fair?
No, it does. It does. I joined when I was in Scouts is when I joined the Sierra Club, and it was, I believed in our natural resource conservation, and but I never was an exclusionist, and I think that that's where things have gone. Is everybody, the exclusionists think that because we like motorized recreation and we like to get outdoors with a vehicle, that we're evil. So they want to exclude everybody except for those that leave footprints.
Right.
They don't even really want horses, or mountain bikes
No.
or any kind of transportation except for your own 2 feet. And
Right.
they call themselves environmentalists, but what they truly are is exclusionists.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know?
And some of them, people who believe in something strong enough to die for it. Okay, I get it. I'll die for my country, for my
Right.
parents, for my wife, and I'll fight. I've been in meetings, Rich. How long has it been? 1994, October. It's Halloween. The Desert Protection Act of Southern California. Locked up like 8 million acres, one fell swoop of a bill. Just done. Wilderness, right? Locked it up. Nothing. Yep. Sat in a meeting with a little old lady, just the sweetest little old lady you could ever imagine. And they were talking about chainsaws and helicopters in the wilderness. What if we have an emergency and we need to chainsaw some trees down and land a helicopter and get somebody out? And this little old lady, you can't do that. No mechanized, no motorized, no chainsaws, no helicopters. She stood up and said she would rather die out in the wilderness than have some helicopter come and get her. And I thought, wow, how do I fight that kind of an attitude? It's like,
yeah, and everybody says that until they're in that situation.
You're telling me nobody wants to die. I assure you, I've been around plenty.
Correct.
And that last minute, I don't care who you are, what you've been doing. You want mama to come home and hold you, and you want to make it back. It's nobody wants to die. But she said that in a public meeting, and I thought, holy cow, how on earth? I was, really heavy into trying to work with the environmentalists, negotiate, compromise, find solutions, mutual benefit. But you can't fight that kind of, I'd rather die. Yeah. Blew me away. But that 8 million acres, that Desert Protection Act, what I was going to tell you about trails.
Right.
For me, you've heard Ricky and other people talk about my Death Valley stuff. That's my heart and soul, for my favorite place to go.
Okay.
And I've lost 50%, one half of the trails I used to do. One half are gone. That'd be like cutting the Rubicon in half, saying you can't do the rest of it. It's like, what? Yeah. Mostly wilderness. That's the big stopper right there.
Yeah.
And I was in, where was I? I was in Pennsylvania at a conference, and I was giving a talk on land use. I stood up and had a good audience, interested people, they wanted to know more about the West. And I said, well, we lost 8 million acres in this one congressional act. And I look around in my audience and I'm quacking away. You see me, I just start talking. I don't stop. Everybody's glazed over. They're like sitting there like zombies, mouth open. So I stopped. I pointed to one guy. I said, what's the matter? What? He said, Dale, how big is 8 million acres? And I said, oh, I guess it's the size of New Jersey, Connecticut, New Hampshire all put together, or some such thing like that. They couldn't conceive. Their wheeling was 160 acres. That's what they had, private land.
Yep.
And they looked at me like I was, what? It really gave me some perspective on, you've been all over the East Coast, West Coast situation. They just don't have the public land, and they couldn't imagine a piece of land so big like that we actually were wheeling on. I've had my parents in Death Valley, places that now, and they were in the back seat of my CJ7, within, let's say, 100 yards of some great thing to see, and now I have to hike in, 3 or 4 miles just to see the same thing I used to see, 100 yards away.
Yeah, and you were actually on probably a mining road then. It wasn't
Yep.
like you were out open wheeling.
No, and it is a desert wash. It
Which has
changes every
changed.
year.
Yep.
Yep, it's silly. There's no damage there being done in a wash. I mean, for goodness sakes, it's just, yeah, well, I have to remind myself not to be sour when I take somebody to Death Valley these days, because, I point up on this mountain and say, well, we used to go up there and see that, or we used to go over there and see that. It's like, people don't want to know what they can't see.
Right. Yep.
So I'm careful about that, but there's still plenty to see. So I will never stop going. I think 38th year, I believe, at least a week. So yeah, love that place.
I've done a bit in Death Valley, not near as much as I would like to. Shelley and I went down one winter over Christmas, and I realized right then that our national parks are visited, I believe, more by non-residents than
Well said.
by Americans themselves, and
Exactly.
I think that is really, really sad that that's the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah. In most national parks, you can't wheel. Death Valley is one of the exceptions, but most of the
Right.
rest of them, you can't wheel, you can't hunt, you can't put out a fire. Let's let Yellowstone burn. Let's
Okay.
let Yosemite burn. It's just stupid. But Death Valley does have wheeling, and it's still there. Once you, it's kind of cool too, because the California Four Wheel Drive Association is now holding an annual event in Death Valley itself. They do one in Panamint Valley, which is the next valley over.
Right.
But now they started one in Death Valley. It's going to be a couple of weeks before Moab. If there's any chance you could make it, it's a fun way to do it with a group like that, because you got people along that know the trails and kind of know what's going on and where to go. And
Interesting. I've had it.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity over the last couple of years working on the Rebel Rally with Emily Miller, that her and Jimmy Lewis have set up and gotten permission to run the rally through parts of Death Valley and through the national park, which to me was absolutely incredible that she, just being able to get the land agencies to agree to permit an event like that, all the different agencies she has to go through and jurisdictions of counties and everything else.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. But there was stuff out there that I didn't realize, that there were so many roads there that were still available.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And to get her permit like that, I mean, I work with Modern Jeeper Adventures now,
Right.
Matson and Corey at Metal Quote. I guide for them in Death Valley. And poor old, Corey, he's a great guy. But he puts up with the paperwork chase to get a permit. It's a commercial operation. You get, 10 Jeeps, whatever. And you're going to go through the park and camp out in the desert. It takes 6 to 8 months to get that permit through the system. The restrictions, the caveats, especially now during this COVID BS, it's so daunting that it discourages you from even trying. But Corey does it. So we have to get permits, and Death Valley is still doable, and then they'll still work with you, but you got to kind of be, firm and strong.
Exactly. And bulldog it about it. It's why when I was running Vora, I stopped. Well, I stopped. I mean, with the desert racing, there was so much, you can't do it on a small footprint. And even though the permits were long going, because Ed Robinson had them for so many years, they just started making it more and more difficult to carry those on. And, you know, when I opened up Moon Rocks for rock crawling, for doing events, you know, the hurdles and the amount of time it took to jump through those. And that's when I realized that I couldn't deal with those government agencies like that. And we did in Farmington in 2009, I did an event down there, Chokecherry Canyon, you know, one of the first places that we ever had rock crawling events. And the office down there, just with cost recovery, just annihilated me.
And
I won't put it the way I normally put it, but it's Shelley's looking at me, shaking her head. Nope, don't say it. But you know, it really upset me. I got the local clubs behind it, and told them, you know, I'm never coming back. You know, I'm going to talk crap on it, everything. And the office, everybody in the office changed. And then I got a call as I was leaving KOH one day and heading to Arizona or someplace, and the new recreational planner down in Farmington called me up and said, "Hey, we want to invite you back." And I went, "Oh, really?" So I pull over on the side of the road, and I was already, you know, at that point, I was done with BLM. So I said, in no uncertain terms, that the only way I would do that is under these conditions. And I named the conditions, and I was really blunt. I didn't know who this guy was. I didn't care. I just knew that everywhere that I had tried to work with, it got harder and harder and harder, to the point where I just said, you know what, I'm not going to do it. Like you said, they just made it so that it wasn't worth it. And, you know, not only emotionally and the work-wise, but financially with cost recovery, they treated, you know, a small event promoter like you were an oil industry, you know, drilling for natural gas or oil, or a big mining operation. You got treated the same way and charged the same dollars. And it's like, guys, we're talking an event that makes, you know, if you make a couple of grand at the end of the weekend, you know, that's awesome. But if you're asking, you know, 10 or 20 grand for us to do the event, how can that work?
It doesn't work.
No.
I know. I watched Dave at the KOH, and the costs that he has to put up with, and we started going in. Stacy and I started going in 2008. I think that was the second one or something. But anyway, you know, it's gone from a reasonable number of dollars, you know, to have a few cops, to it just inordinate. I mean, it's crazy how much he's putting out to cost recovery. And by the way, and you reminded me before we started our conversation, this is our 20th anniversary of knowing each other, Rich.
Yeah.
It's November of 2001, you said, when we did the, you know, put up or shut up shootout. It was Lake Amador, wasn't it?
Yep, Lake Amador, yes.
Yeah, I was media back then, photography, so you let me on the court. I got to take pictures, and one of your first rock crawls with Cal Rocks back then.
Yeah, it was the very first one. Yep.
20 years ago, yeah. Well, you know, and you talk about the permit process. In my preachings and writings, I'm trying to keep clubs from turning into outlaws, because or
turning the outlaws into legits.
Just forget the permit. It's too much work.
Yeah.
We're going to go anyway. You know, and then they learned, well, don't post it on the social networks, because they'll see you and they'll come out and get you. So then they started hiding their link ups and just going anyway. And not a lot of clubs, but, you know, enough that it was visible. And so I was working hard to help them, you know, hey, I'll help you with the paperwork. We'll find somebody to help you. You know, we'll get through this permit process. And it's daunting, discouraging, and it shuts you down. And another example is our friend, you know, Jeff.
Yep.
Jeff Knoll. He tried to do that rally venture, did 2 of them. I was at both of them, lost both times. Paperwork and BLM just shut him down. He just, enough, you know, it just wasn't worth it.
Exactly. No, that's, and And I have to give credit where credit is due with Ultra 4, King of the Hammers, especially that event, to keep it going and growing like Dave has done is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the amount of work that goes into that permit every year, and now that it's no longer out of the Barstow office, but it's out of the state office, is, I mean, I got to give him credit for that, if for nothing else, for just bearing that burden getting through the permit process.
The persistence. It's more than a full-time job.
Yes.
And it's persistent. And I've done permits for modern Jeeper adventures up in Oregon, state forestry. You wouldn't think that would be a big deal. It's not a political hotspot. Well, 6 months is a minimum. Get that first piece of paper in, and even earlier is better. And I'm thinking, it's let's say a $50 permit and about 2 hours of paperwork. How on earth would it take 6 months? But yeah,
we just did. We're back in Rangeley, Colorado. We did an event there. We had done, I think it was 2 or 3 years in a row. We had used an area there, at least 2 years, and it was like 5 years, 6 years prior to this last year. And we decided, hey, let's go back in there, because with COVID, we couldn't go into certain spots, so we had to find new locations, to keep the schedule. And they went through and had to do, even though we're using the exact same area that we had used 5 or 6 years ago, now they're going through the whole process again, because nobody in that office was there, in the hierarchy of the office, was there during the other permit processes.
Oh my.
So everything had to be done again. And my conversation with them up front was, I don't even want to get started with this if it's going to involve cost recovery. Can you do this without cost recovery? And they were like, oh yeah, we could do that. Well, I held them to it. They ended up putting a lot more hours into it, but it was all stuff that had already been done.
Yeah.
The NEPA studies and the archaeological studies. It's an open OHV area, and it's called the rock crawling course.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't. And then they didn't let us use the good rocks. It was ridiculous.
Well, I try and I've put on a lot of training courses, recreational leadership training course and a volunteer leader land stewardship course. I think I have 300 students now that I put through it, including some of your interviewees like Kurt Snyder.
And Kevin Carey.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And a lot of people came out of that course, changed human beings, not just because of my good looks and charm. It was interaction in the class.
Right.
That first class up at Ice House by the Rubicon, it had people that every name in that class is now somebody. It was my mission was to get people enough knowledge and tools so they could deal with this bureaucracy, keep our trail open, set the example, lead by example, and have some knowledge, just enough to not let some flip-flop wearing cargo pants greenie for a federal employee tell them, no, we can't do that. I gave these people tools to get past that first obstacle, shall we say.
Right.
And that was my life. When we started the Friends of Rubicon in 2001, same time you and I got hooked up. And it went strong for about 50. I was a trail boss for about 10 years, and another 5 years we had other people leading it. And it basically, we took the key to that trail away from the county, and this is our trail, we'll keep it open. We faced all kinds of closure threats and fines and lawsuits, and that was during the time when the DUI law was changed where it used to be on pavement, but then if you're off road and you're driving, it's still a DUI, right? You can't have an open carry, yada yada, or open can. And of course, there's always a few beer cans on the trail. I always stop and pick them up, like a lot of people,
Yep.
keep our trail clean, right? The greenies would hide in the bushes, like by little sloughs or by Ellis Creek. They'd hide. And I don't know if they planted the beer cans or not, but they would try to get a picture of me picking up a beer can and putting it in red, my Jeep, which is, that's
Like
violation.
you had just finished drinking.
Yes. The
Yeah.
picture would obviously make it look like I just finished it and put it in my Jeep. So, of course, then, Cal 4 Wheel, Corva, a lot of the groups started coming up, Spider Web, they started coming up with these bags on the back. And that was legal. I could put the trash in that bag and not near, the passenger compartment of my Jeep. But it got so bad that I basically would, pick it up with my picker-uppers or my gloves and put it in somebody else's trash bag. It never got near red because they were trying to discredit me and the Friends of the Rubicon.
That sounds like one of those Karen moves.
Yeah, it definitely, you hit it on the head right there. Mm-hmm.
And I find that so interesting now that they use that as a, and I know it's not based off of her, but that whole meme thing. Oh, look at Karen, the one yelling and screaming in the window because you're running your truck or you're, they don't like what you're doing. And it was so fitting.
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
man.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it shocked me at the extremes that they would go to try to, discredit a volunteer, cause that was trying to do good, clean up the trail and pick up the poop. And you remember the days we were poop picker-uppers.
Oh, yeah.
I had, boards of supervisors, Jack Sweeney in the day. We were all out there picking up poop around Spider that one time frame, 2003 or 4, somewhere in there. And, quarter-ton military trailers full of it, several. One of our first cleanups trying to make sure the poop didn't get in the lake. Went through all that and it made the group strong.
When all that first started, I looked at Disco and I said, "Hey, you need to get up there," because he was working for, I don't know if it was EID or SMUD, but he was testing. He was water quality testing.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, you need to go, test all the waters up here right now, so that we have, that database. So if they come in with their own testers, that we have something,
Yeah.
And he was like, "Great idea." They still had some testing on a lot of those waters from way back as well. So we had those numbers to tell them that they were, more full of shit than the trail was.
Wasn't that when you were helping me with the what do we call it?
Trail patrol?
Yeah, trail patrol.
Well, you asked me to bring that over to Friends of the Rubicon, but that's not how that started. That started, as more of a vigilante group, you might say, trying to correct some of the behaviors or educate people on the behaviors that were happening. And I remember that one weekend I was up there and you were there, and there was some firefighters out of the Bay Area that were in Jeeps, and they were not where they needed to be. And we had been told that, so you went over, and I said, "Well, I'll take care of it." And you go, no, I can talk these guys' language. And you went over there and you took care of it, and that was much appreciated. But that education had to happen back then at that point because there was so much exposure on the Rubicon at that point, and with them closing, the private property owner at Bassey closing the falls down or the access to the falls, it forced everybody, that used to be the party spot. And so it was a small area. It was easy to clean up. And people kind of kept it, there was groups that went in there and cleaned it up. But then when it got up on, those same people started going up onto the Rubicon, thinking that they could treat it like they did Bassie, it was, there needed to be an education. And so that's why I started that.
Yes, made a difference. And we were kind of our own worst enemy in a lot of ways. And in some cases, pirate, much as I love Lance, Lance started pirate, and it gave so many people that keyboard warrior kind of hey, look at me. Here's a video of me drinking my beer, driving through little sloughs, one-handed, with my 5-year-old kid sitting next to me. Aren't I cool? Yeah, and that would end up on the pirate or the socials, and I'm thinking, oh, don't do this, and it took a few years to kind of get that to go away.
Right.
At least
People to realize that was not, that's
it was
not
killing
what
us.
we didn't need to be showing that kind of behavior.
Well, I'd end up in a meeting, and me and like my motorcycle land use side buddy Don Amador, Kevin, Kurt, and all these guys that were helping. We'd end up in some congressional testimony or a big meeting, and all of a sudden here's this video of one of our own people doing something stupid, driving up a tree, winching up to the top limb. I mean, just crazy, illegal, and making videos of it. And it would end up in that meeting where I'm trying to convince the politicians how great we are because we're volunteers. We're going to save the trail.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I sat in meetings where back east, the ATV crowd was really getting strong, right? This is before the side-by-side crowd.
Yeah.
The ATV crowd. And all of a sudden, we're fighting with each other over grant money because the ATV people wanted it, the dirt bike people wanted it, and the Jeeping people wanted it. And they couldn't agree, and they didn't like each other, so they fought in public meetings with a grant board, ready to dish out, $1 million. Well, we're not going to dish out any today until you guys can all get your stuff together and quit arguing with each other and fighting. And there's still some of that today because the ATV people, when they hit the Rubicon, not all of them followed the rules and stayed in the line. And much as we all hate lines, it was just too easy to get out of the line and buzz around through the brush and the bushes and off trail and, take a shortcut.
Yep.
It was killing us for a while. The education process, in one of my articles, most read probably of all I've written, it's called the 4 E's. Education, engineering, engaging, and enforcement. It's the 4 E's of Enlightenment. I had to remember what it was called. But education is probably the biggest, good signage and things like that. Engineering is how the trail is laid out and how the obstacles are laid out and bypasses so people don't get stuck, and it's a good trail system. Engaging or enlisting is getting volunteers to adopt it and use it and take care of it, be a part of it. And then last E was enforcement. When all else fails, you got to have cops out there. That's all there is to it.
Right.
I took a lot of heat when I brought, like trail patrol and cops to the Rubicon. I got grant money to get cops out there, but there's just a point in time where, education and common sense just is not working. So I got several people, hooked up and sent to federal court in Lake Tahoe. It doesn't sound like a terrible thing, but it's usually 2 or 3 days off work because you're back and forth, $400 fine, yada yada. I mean, and it's pain in the butt. But most of them learn their lesson after one bust.
Yeah, I remember we were doing a law enforcement tour or government agency tour, and you called out for volunteers to take people in and out, and we were all standing there at the gatekeeper at Loon Lake side of the trail, and that vehicle, I'm not going to throw the guy under the bus with the name or what the vehicle exactly looked like, but it was a homemade vehicle that had a unique body, and he came down from the dam area, down the hillside, through the brush, like showing off that he could do this in front of, well, there was the federal judge there. There was all sorts of law enforcement from every agency in, whether it was highway patrol, anybody that had any jurisdiction up in the mountains, and, Forest Service, and there was 20, 30 of us standing there, and that guy drove in.
Yeah.
And the joke was, well, we have the judge, we have prosecutors, we have defense attorneys, and we have enough people to put together a jury. What's the verdict? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
the guy thought he was so cool until he realized who he drove up on.
Yeah.
Bad timing.
There was so much learning curve back then. And folks, you and me and several of the leaders I had in Friends of the Rubicon, we took our share of heat, because the good old boys didn't want cops on the trail, and they didn't want to change, and they didn't want more people showing up. And, but had we not done those things, that trail would be closed tighter than a tick right now, other than the landowners having access.
True. Yep.
It would be, that's one of the sacrifices I make. I wheel all around the country, and I go places where, man, this is nice. I'm not going to tell anybody and keep this quiet. It's like a good fishing hole, right?
Yep.
It didn't take me long to figure out, if I didn't have an army behind me that had been there and done that and seen it, it's hard to get them to step up and help you save it.
True.
So I give up my good places and my secrets in Death Valley and the Sweetwater Mountains on 395. I show people and take them there and say, now when the time comes, I have your name and number. You're going to help me save this someday. Oh, yeah, no problem, Dale. Well, I'm going to hold you to it. So, yeah, he was like the first guys that knew about moon rocks.
Yep.
Tried to keep it quiet for a long time, but when he gets in trouble, you need an army.
True.
Yeah.
So, what's the hot topic right now?
Well, we've been through several. In California, it's still, places like some of the riding areas for the dirt bikers. That's, asbestos at Clear Creek, and development around some of the state recreation areas. That's always going to be an issue that the greenies will keep bringing up. Honestly, it seems like most of the interest in land use, the stuff that I do and Kurt, it has fizzled, literally. When President Trump took over, it looked like everything was going to get fixed, whether we wanted it to or not. It was going good, and some of the idiot rules were being erased. And then COVID hit, and the land use side of the world has just kind of gone quiet. So the issues don't seem to surface like they were. Wilderness areas are still out there. People are more focused, from what I've seen, on things like, kids' rights in school and masks and shots, and totally distracted from keeping our trails open.
True.
It's like, it's not even an issue. I mean, it's an issue, but they're not interested.
Right.
So it's a full-time job trying to keep people motivated to, stay in the game. Overlanding has taken over. People that have great big rock crawling buggies are ending up buying these less than a rock crawler with a rooftop tent and some gas can on the back, and it used to be called car camping. They're going overlanding.
Yeah, we went from extreme wheeling, rock crawling, to extreme camping.
Yeah, exactly. And I can spend as much money on extreme camping as I can setting up a buggy.
Oh yeah, and then you get to show it off, when you go to
Oh
the
yeah.
KOH campground on the way, you set up your scuttle, nothing against these products, but I mean, your rooftop tent with 4 annex rooms and a
Uh-huh.
270-degree shade, and
Yeah.
your
A $350 or $500 stove instead of the old two-burner Coleman. You're gonna have this,
white
you
gas
know.
pump, yeah. Now
Yeah.
everything's solar operated. I'm
Oh
surprised
yeah.
we haven't seen solar operated like microwaves or something. I mean,
Oh,
everybody. I don't know. It's getting crazy.
well, and Ford just came out this year with that F-150 with a built-in generator in it. For goodness sakes,
Exactly.
7 kW. If you want the big one, that's you could run the whole compound. I was with a guy in Death Valley. This one of the modern Jeeper trips. He and his wife, beautiful JK, just a beautiful Jeep. And literally, when you open the back tailgate, pop that window and look in the back, he had a command center console. All these big inverters, converters, this, that, and buttons and plugins and the USBs. I mean, I was impressed. And I guess he did most of the work himself. And it took weeks to wire, rig, and set up this command console in the back of his overlanding Jeep. It was amazing.
I saw that kind of stuff at SEMA this year. Some of the companies out there are, we're getting more and more solar. It's getting more and more efficient. And
Yeah.
it's amazing what people are doing. I mean, little micro AC units that, are running off of, you don't even have to have a generator to run them, just inverters and solar panels, and you have the AC for your tent. I mean, you might as well just stay at home and, and watch TV instead of going out in the woods and watching TV.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I enjoy it though. The overlanding, even though you're setting up camp every night, taking it down every morning, putting it up, putting it down, up and down, up and down. It's still fun for about a week. And then last year I spent 19 days in Death Valley doing that. 19 days in a row. And by the time I got home, my butt was tired. And I didn't want to set up anything. I just wanted to sit in my easy chair and watch the tube.
Makes sense. I get it. We do a lot after the rock crawling season is over, and then right away we do the Rebel Rally, and we go move into our adventure trailer that we pull with our pickup truck, and we do that. We're the adventure trailer has the rooftop tent on it. I like to be able to unhitch and then go explore, come back and sleep, not have to tear down and set up every day. But if you have to, it's easy enough because it's on a trailer right behind you. But it's we stay in that until we get, after SEMA, and we're ready to, now head to the Gulf Coast. So.
Right on.
We probably do close a couple of years. We've done 30, 40 days. Like last year we did after the Rebel and SEMA, then we went from Apache Junction outside of Phoenix all the way to, just about, I'd say Las Cruces, all off-road, with maybe 20 miles of pavement.
Wow.
And it was awesome.
I dig it. That's like when Chris Collard and I went from Mexico to Canada, all dirt roads.
Yep.
That was 10 years ago. Jeez. But yeah, overlanding, it is fun. I admit it.
Extreme car camping. Yep.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with it. Overlanders, don't get upset. I'm not bagging on you. You're not all Olaf. It's okay.
You won't. Now, my Jeep. You know Red pretty well. You're not going to get mad at me if I put the snorkel back on, get an angry grill, and a bigger light bar. And
Nope, it's your Jeep. You can do anything you want on it. I don't have to say anything. Everybody else will.
Red started out with a snorkel. I had a snorkel on him back 20 some odd years ago.
Well,
He's
on
25 years old.
Fordyce, the river crossings, that's a good idea. Well, that's the only place I can think of it.
When I put it on, the folks convinced me on Pirate that it would help with air injection. Turn the snorkel so it's facing the wind and push some wind in and, increase your fuel and yada, yada, give you a little more power. So I believed it.
Like you needed more power in that thing.
Well, yeah. But poor Red's he's 180,000 miles now. So he's on his second engine. Still going strong, though.
So the only time it laid on its side was when Stacy was driving?
Yes, sir. That's a fact.
I was there.
Uncle Del has never rolled or flipped a vehicle.
Well, I can't say that. I've done that a number of times.
Well, I don't rock crawl professionally either. That would be a different story. But from trail riding, yeah, we were at pirate camp in Pirates of the Rubicon, and well, there might have been a little partying going on the night before, but she wanted to drive out. They made us honorary pirates, so there must have been a lot of partying going on. But she wanted to drive out. We got to Walker Hill, coming out, and that one, how it used to be pretty rutted out.
Yes.
Just a bank on one side. I mean, it was really rutted that year. We were coming out, and she started getting too far on that uphill bank. Red was coming up on her side, coming up. I said, and I'm passengered up because I think I had a small headache. And so I'm passengered up. We're all seat belted in. Pretty soon, I said, honey, you better get over. We weren't married then. We were just dating. She says, I'm coming over. And sure enough, here comes the Jeep on my side. Bang! Landed on my door. Now, here's the funny part. You know the story. But I could smell gas. Now, I could smell it. When we hit, there was a whiff of gas. And I heard gas pouring out. I could hear it. This liquid pouring out on the ground. I heard this sound. I smelled the gas. And I said to Stace, I said, get out. It's going to blow. Well, Stacy and I carry one-handed knives, where you can pull it out of your pocket, flip it open with your thumb.
Right.
So you can get out of a seatbelt in a bad situation. I've never had to do it. But guess what? Her seatbelt cut loose, mine wouldn't. So she's standing on the window of the driver's door, pulling on me, trying to get me out of the Jeep while we think this thing's going to blow up. She's pulling on me. Of course, I made the seatbelt worse, right? Anyway, I pull out my one-handed knife thinking, thank God, get ready to cut the seatbelt. Well, let go. So she helps me out. We get over to the side. We're holding each other. We're looking at the Jeep, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. It's on the passenger side. The gas tank is on the driver's side, uphill. It can't be pouring out. Well, short of the story is maybe I got a whiff of gas. Maybe I don't know. But the water pouring out was the water coming out of the ice chest, still tight to the Jeep. So, big sigh of relief. And, people came back and helped us upright it, and we drove it home. But that was 2004.
God, was it back then? Wow.
Wait a minute. Let's see. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it was.
It was 2004 because we got married in 2005.
Oh.
You still married me anyway.
Oh, thank you, dear. And that's what I was going to say. Even, she's trying to save me. She wouldn't leave me. I married that woman. Yeah. So that's a fact.
That's awesome.
Anyway. Yeah. I love that Jeep of mine. In fact, it's in the shop right now. I got to admit, Rich, let's just say I'm a little older than you. And, like 19 days in Death Valley, I get in and out of the Jeep 100 times a day. showing people rocks, showing people plants, talking about something, in and out. And, Red's 6 inches up. I mean, he's lifted. He's got parts and pieces. Yeah, I still can do it, but after 100 times,
Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of like, where is my nap? Where's my cot? Anyway, I'm trying to get some like those rock slide engineering slider steps
Right.
where the power step comes down when you open the door.
Very nice. Yes,
It's time.
it
I
is.
still want to use Red, but I don't need to be jumping in and out like that all day. When I was a paratrooper, I kind of banged up my back, jumping out of planes with scuba tanks and guns and equipment. I banged up my back pretty good. So a little assist step is going to be nice.
Sounds like it'll be very nice. Very nice.
Yes, I can't wait.
So, anything new and exciting for the two of you?
We are going to be so happy when this world gets back to some semblance of what it used to be. We're going to start out 2022. Right off the bat, I'll be doing an overlanding thing in Arizona. And of course, we'll do a little convention stuff with California Four-Wheel Drive Association. I'll do some more modern Jeeper in spring with Death Valley. And then we'll go to Moab and see people we haven't seen in 2 years.
Yes.
Get back on the Rubicon in the summer. I always convince people, or try to, that, just wait till that snow and mud are gone and enjoy the trail and, the summertime.
Right.
So I'll be doing some of that. Yeah, it's going to be I'm hoping it's a normal, busy spring, because I'm tired of this crap we've been putting up with. And I hope you're okay with me saying crap.
Oh yeah. There's no vocabulary that is not okay on my podcast.
Gotcha.
Hey,
Gotcha.
Listen to my sons. My Lord, he's got a dirty mouth. Anyway.
I hear you.
So anyway, yep.
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, Rich. It's I haven't shared my story like quite in its depth, I don't think, ever. So
Well, that's good. That's what I try to get out of people. Everybody goes, well, some people say I don't have a story to tell. We know Del has a story to tell. It's almost as long as the Bible, right? It goes from the beginning of time.
Considering I'm as old as Death Valley, yeah. Smarty pants.
Yeah, that's me. Anyway, Del, thank you so much for coming on board and sharing your history. And Stacy, thank you for being back there holding up the notes for him.
Yeah, she's getting me some coffee, but thank you, Rich. I thoroughly enjoyed it, partner.
All right. And you take care, and we'll talk again here shortly.
Right on, brother. Okay.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.